Tonight, Martin Amidu, the special prosecutor, has resigned, and it's stirred an honestness. We're just about 20 days to a major election. This is a proper bombshell. Let's go through what he said on the day when he resigned. Now, we were all left with this shocking news today by Martin Amidu. He had raised a few issues, citing the traumatic experience he went through after the corruption risk assessment on the report of Ejapa Royalties Limited transactions as one of the key reasons why he had to resign. But there are a few more startling matters. According to Mr. Amidu, in undertaking the analysis of the risk of prevention of corruption and anti-corruption assessment, he sincerely believed that he was executing an independent mandate. And so when the issue about interference seemed to have cropped up, irked him a lot. Now, he says the reactions he received for daring to produce the Ejapa Royalties report indicates that he was not intended to exercise any independence as a special prosecutor. That is, I guess, one of the key concerns he raised about his independence, the purity of it. He asked that his position as a special prosecutor has consequentially become clearly untenable as a result of what he believes to be interference in his work, in his ability to do his work independently. Now, a few revelations had emerged because we have cited the actual resignation letter he had written to the president announcing or informing him of his resignation, in which he put a few things. That the SP's appointment letter was received on 5th February 2020, almost 2 years after his appointment. This is according to Martin Amidu. Before this, we didn't know that the formal letter that he got appointing him was only received this year. We're learning that tonight. Now, he also said the copy addresses made no efforts to honor any of the conditions of appointment in terms of emolument. It says his emolument was also an issue. The benefits that were due to him was also an issue, and that he had not received all his entitlements to date. He also indicates that the deputy special prosecutor has also not been paid any emolument since her appointment as well. Now, this is a subject of some controversy because according to the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament, they have on the record that Martin Amidu had indeed been drawing his salary together with his deputy directly from the presidency since he was appointed. And that's one of the things that Martin Amidu needs to reconcile, because there's information that contradicts him here. Now, also, according to the SP, the events of the 12th November 2020, and the 12th of November is Thursday, and that is the death of former President Rawlings. He says the death of former President Rawlings, it doesn't actually name the event, it just gives you a date. But check what happened that day. That's the day when former President Rawlings passed on. He says that removed the only protection he had from the threats and plans directed at him for undertaking the Ejapa Royalties Limited transactions, and dictates that he resigns immediately. It gives this particular part of his statement, it's really pregnant with a lot of meaning. I mean, is he suggesting that it was former President Rawlings who had been protecting him all this while from what he describes as threats and plans directed at him since he undertook the Ejapa Royalties Limited transaction risk assessment? And that now the former President Rawlings is dead, that protection is gone, and he had to go. I mean, that's a lot. There's a lot there to digest in what he's suggesting in this. And we're expecting some clarity on this from the Jubilee House shortly, because this raises several questions indeed. What are the facts? Now, this is not the first time Martin Amidu is involved with a government and had left under very controversial circumstances, in its wake revealing all and leaving that government deeply troubled. In fact, it's also not the first time he's done something like this in an election year. We've seen this play out before under the John Mills administration when he was the Attorney General, and that's what we pulled up for you here. This is just context, okay? Just to understand that for Martin Amidu, this is not the first time similar thing has happened. In the case here on January 2012, then President Atta Mills sacked Martin Amidu as Attorney General for alleged misconduct. That was the word that was used in the statement issued by the presidency following a cabinet meeting. And if you remember, this was in the heat of the Alfred Woyome scandal, right? Now, Martin Amidu, as the Attorney General, had gone public and accused some government officials of embezzling some, use this word, gargantuan. If you remember this word, it became a very prominent part of our collective national lexicon and dictionary. We use it quite a lot because he introduced it. The gargantuan corruption, sum of money in relation to the Woyome scandal. He had gone public here. Now, what happened? When he did this, he was asked to prove or provide evidence to back this claim by the president, of course, John Mills, may his soul rest in perfect peace. And at the cabinet meeting, we of course still haven't been told exactly what happened. There are many reports of what might have happened in this cabinet meeting, because in this cabinet meeting, the report is that 1, he could not provide the evidence to back his claim. 2, he got upset and reacted in a way that was confrontational towards the sitting president, and his position became untenable again and was sacked. A statement was issued explaining why he was sacked for misconduct. So this was in 2012, right? Deja vu, same year, election year. I mean, unfortunately, we know that John Mills then dies in July of that year before the elections itself. And Woyome's matter played out throughout that year. Then the MPP were in opposition, and they used that as cannon fodder for campaigning quite aggressively, forming a song about gargantuan and Woyome back then. 2020, Martin Amidu again at the center of another political election school corruption matter. This time, he had resigned, leaving in his wake serious revelations and a government facing an election, you know, with a baggage like this to deal with when it comes to the corruption tag. So that is just to put it in context for you in terms of Martin Amidu and his relationship both with his government and the previous NDC government. One man who we'll be speaking to on this show today is Inusa Fuseni, right? He says when Martin Amidu was appointed that President Akufo-Addo was holding the tail of a lion. It appears tonight that the lion had bitten him, and he had also predicted that he will resign. You also recall Amidu disclosed a lot regarding the Woyome case. After his resignation, he went public. There was a lot of conversation surrounding, you know, the confidentiality clauses that he had signed or sworn to protect when he was Attorney General. Tonight, we've seen his actual resignation letter to the president. We have seen his statement to the public, raising very fundamental issues and disclosing a few more. I want to bring in right now my guest on the show tonight, joining me via Zoom. We have Ben Abdallah. He's the chairman of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament. The reason why that committee is important, that committee worked on crafting and fine-tuning the law that created the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and he chaired that. Also joining me is Adam Senanu, who is the co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Joins us also via Zoom. Also joining me tonight is John Ndebugri. He's a renowned legal practitioner, and he famously also predicted that Martin Amidu will resign, and in fact, he has resigned tonight. I'm delighted that he could also join me tonight. We're also expecting to be speaking to shortly to also Inusa Fuseni, who will also join us. I want to start with Mr. Abdallah. Mr. Abdallah will join me shortly. We'll also be joined, as I said, by John and Debugri. But let me bring in Adam Senanu, who of course is with me. Mr. Senanu, I mean, was it just last week? Was it last week Tuesday? You were on this show, and we're talking about Martin Amidu and the political dilemma. And in fact, I asked you a question just before we ended that show, whether Martin Amidu's position is tenable in the wake of everything that we have learned on that show. And if I recall correctly, your answer was, yeah, he could still do the job. Today will be just a day shy of 1 week when you said that to me. What do you make of looking back and look at what has happened today? Has anything changed for you? He's resigned, obviously, but your reaction. Sorry, you've muted your Zoom.
No, it's not muted.
Oh, I can hear you.
I'm
now.
not sure.
Great. I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. All right. To be honest, it's come as a shock, and I'm disappointed, particularly because of the facts that he has put out there. Yes, Martin is a controversial character in one sense, but he has brought to the fray, has brought to this position that capacity to speak his mind and provide facts in a way that, is the kind of thing that if you want to push the frontiers of good governance and to deal with corruption, you need that kind of strong man. So we've all known that this is somebody who is like a double-edged sword. And I wasn't anticipating that he would have so much difficulty that he would choose to resign. That certainly was not on my mind when I was speaking to you almost a week ago.
I think the line is not holding. I want to bring in private legal practitioner, Mr. John and Debugri. Mr. Debugri, thank you for joining me. You had predicted when, in fact, you called him your junior brother, Martin Amidu was appointed by this current president. You predicted that he will resign. And your prediction had come to pass. But I'm just curious, what informed that certainty when you were making that prediction back then?
Evans, I think I dropped. So if you can ask that question again.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Adam Senanu. Let me stay with Mr. Ndebugri. Mr. Ndebugri, please,
okay,
yes.
Okay.
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners. Well, I have worked with Martin, not just worked with him, I've also grown up with him. We grew up together in the same area, and we came to work together as government officials. And so when he was appointed, I just looked at the architecture of the structure of the institution that had been established and put under his care. And I could see clearly that there were going to be difficulties. That is one thing. The other thing is that I was not very sure that, and I have stated this earlier, that there was an agreement or an agreement of mine within the MPP and his government that they wanted to appoint or to establish the office of special prosecutor for the purposes of fighting corruption. So there were these two considerations I took into account and predicted that Martin would not likely survive in that office. Hello?
Yes, in light of those key issues that you had raised, and the architecture for you was key. Tonight, you heard his. We got an insight into his actual resignation letter he gave to the president, in which he made some really startling revelations in there. And I heard you say on radio this evening, that it confirms the position you held at the beginning. Everything else you read and had.
Yes, it just confirmed, because that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that there was no intention really to establish the Office of Special Prosecutor as an independent organization to fight corruption. It was one of the low-hanging fruits, to easily use as a means of pulling wool over the eyes of the public. Just pretend that you have established something when you don't expect it to operate. And that is what it has. His letter, both his letter to the president and the public statement he put out, so clearly that has confirmed my position. Because it is now clear that even the president himself did not want him to go into a matter in which he was involved. He used very, very straightforward language.
Yes.
Like being a judge in your own court. That's a very serious indictment for a president who claims that he wants to fight corruption and who is a lawyer of long standing. It's one of the grievous offenses in law to be a judge in your own court. Yes, I mean, that is one of the fundamental human rights principles that the judges take very seriously. So I'm saying that all that I said at the beginning is what has been confirmed.
I want to bring in the ranking on the chair of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament on this subject of the architecture, which John Ndubugri has used as a basis for that prediction, which has played out so accurately. Mr. Ben Abdallah, first of all, you worked very hard on this SP bill as a chair of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee. Let me get your quick reaction to the news tonight. Can you please unmute the Zoom, please? We can hear you.
Good evening to all your viewers and to all your listeners. In fact, I also got the news this evening. And when I got the news, honestly speaking, somebody would say it was bound to happen. Because, as we all do know, because of his antecedents. And when Martin Amidu was appointed, there were two schools of thoughts. One school of thoughts received the news of his appointment with joy and euphoria, and said that was the right man to be chosen or appointed for that position, because we all know Martin Amidu to be tough and to be determined and to be, to some extent, competent. So everybody thought that Martin Amidu was going to execute a very good job. And there was this other school of thought that said that Martin Amidu could not perform this job as the special prosecutor to the satisfaction of the Ghanaian populace because of some reasons that they assigned. So when I heard this news, what I said was that Martin Amidu has vindicated those who said that he could not perform the job to the satisfaction of the Ghanaian populace. But what surprises me about Martin Amidu is the way he tried to justify the reasoning for his resignation, going to the extent of publicizing the reasons underpinning his resignation to the public or for the consumption of the public. Because I thought that once it was the president that gave the appointment, if for any reason you wanted to resign, you should send your resignation letter to the president, which he has done. But to me, I see it as a bit unethical to go to the extent of revealing certain secrets, which to me should have been kept secret. But it is his personal decision. Once he has taken a personal decision that he could no longer perform a function, a public function that had been entrusted onto him, nobody could force him to perform that function. And I believe that the president has accepted his resignation letter in good faith, and at appropriate time, a very good replacement will be found by the president to continue the work that he left.
Okay, I mean, just a comment. I had with me lawyer John Ndebugri, and he had made the point that the architecture of the office that was crafted by the government, of course, your committee worked on it, was from the onset not designed to allow Martin Amidu the independence to work. And it is a reason why, even from the onset, he knew that Martin Amidu will resign. In fact, he says he was even surprised that his friend, Martin Amidu, accepted to do the job, knowing that architecture. Well, what do you say to that? Because you worked on fine-tuning that architecture.
The architecture that Parliament of Ghana designed or fashioned out and designed for the Office of the Special Prosecutor, to some extent, was insulated from political interferences. It wasn't problematic at all, because this is an architecture that was designed and created to a large extent to be made independent. And indeed, that is what the law says. So, in fact, if an office or a body is supposed to be independent, it is the occupants of the office who should assert the independence. Whatever be the case, at a point in time, as a human institution, you will be experiencing certain interferences. That is my personal opinion. But it is for you as the occupant of that office to assert your independence. You should not expect an outsider to assert that independence for you. So that independence has been set down and protected by the law. And we were expecting Martin Amidu to assert that independence. And point number two, in fact, when Martin Amidu appeared before us some time ago, he was lamenting about finances. But he admitted that when he realized that financing was not forthcoming from the Minister of Finance.
I think we've lost him there, but he was making a very important point, and I want to bring back Mr. Ndebugri. I'll go back to Senator Nu shortly. Mr. Ndebugri, he makes an important point as a chair. Sorry. Forgive me because of the nature of the line. I want to bring Mr. Ndebugri on this. Mr. Ndebugri, the chairman of the committee that worked on the SP architecture makes a point that, yes, Martin Amidu complains about interference and attempts to undermine his independence, but the law was there for him to assert his independence and simply do his job. In fact, I've heard tonight Mahama Yariga say that he's running away from a fight. He's chosen the easy way out when he could have stood, used the same law that created his office, did his job, and simply did his job without fear or favor and asserting that independence. What's your reaction to that approach?
I mean, what I'm saying is that the law specifically says that the special prosecutor will prosecute cases subject to the mandate of the Attorney General. It is in the law. Secondly, the architecture I talked about, if you look at the law closely, you realize that it is like establishing a company. The Office of Special Prosecutor was established like a company. And the Special Prosecutor was merely the managing director of the company with a board and its chairman and membership, which the special prosecutor could not, ignore, because it's not about putting one line that the special prosecutor in the performance of his function shall be independent. That doesn't solve the problem. You establish a thing like a company with a board chairman, board members, and so on, and simply made the special prosecutor the chief executive officer of the company. The chief executive officer cannot override the decisions of the board. That was one flaw which I tried to point out and which people didn't listen to. The more serious one is the one I have stated already, that the law also said that he was to prosecute cases on the authority of the Attorney General. So what was the purpose of setting up that office? Since the Attorney General was already available. I have said somewhere else that, look, maybe there is no need for that so-called office of special prosecutor. Maybe a possible solution is to detach the Attorney General's office from the Minister of Justice and strengthen the Attorney General's office and make it really independent. So the Attorney General would deal with matters without any political lenses. And I don't even understand the meaning of Ministry of Justice. There's no need for a Ministry of Justice, because if we have a strong judiciary with a Chief Justice and the judges and so on, they are dealing with justice. What do you need a Ministry of Justice for? So if there's an Attorney General which is strengthened and made really independent, there's no need to go about establishing extra offices like that. But I come back to the same point. I'm saying that if anybody says that law was meant to fight corruption, anybody who says that needs a lot of convincing to bring me over to his or her side. Because the law was simply a rule. As I said, election promises, then you go and plug the low-lying fruit, low-hanging fruit, and just try and give the
But Mr. Ndebugri, if what you say is true, then Martin Amidu should have known this when he first accepted the job. In fact, I want to read you something he says in a letter to the president.
I said so at the beginning, that he ought to have known. And I've said elsewhere that he walked into a landmine knowing that he was walking into a landmine. And my prayer was that he would come out of it safely. I hope he is coming out of it safely.
I mean, let me bring in Adam Senanu. Senanu, let me read to you something Martin Amidu says relating to his relationship with the current president. He says, the one condition upon which I accepted to be nominated as a special prosecutor when you invited me to your office was your firm promise to me that you will respect and ensure same by your government for my independence and freedom of action as a special prosecutor. Then he says, several things have happened since then. By your reaction to my letter, with reference number, he mentions it, which was delivered to you, he mentions the date, conveying to you the conclusions and observations of the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption assessment of the Japa Royalties Limited transactions, convinces me beyond reasonable doubt that you had labored under the mistaken belief that I could hold the office of the special prosecutor as your poodle. Mr. Senanu, what's your reaction to this? This is very loaded.
Much understand what Martin is trying to express here. In fact, let me first start off by saying that I respectfully disagree with Mr. Bembanda that this office was set up as a highly independent office and that the SP just needed to assert its independence. I think that's just talk. I think that there was a design flaw. Let's all admit it. He had no control over his staff, not alone select them or to sanction them, etc., or to get space that was suitable. I think that let's not suggest that that office was independent. But to your substantive question, you know, there have been many times where I just felt, okay, it may just be the boys around the presidency and other people, other agencies that are making it difficult for this office to proceed and to deliver on its mandate to us. And so in my mind, it was more like, look, if the president gets to hear of this, he'll do what is necessary to ensure that that office is delivering on its mandate. I think that to the extent that a particular incident happened where Ms. Amidu had then engaged the president on this particular final report, the Japa royalties thing, and the feedback or the engagement subsequent gave him the indication that, look, this report may not meet what we expected, and we are not expecting that you should take actions related to it. That whole kind of environment will probably then just settle the matter for him, as it would have for me if I was the one engaging the president at the time, that maybe this is not just about the boys and other people who are just making it difficult for us to proceed. So I definitely understand the language and what it's expressing. And I'm thinking that, look, this is probably the thing that broke the camel's neck for him in terms of his understanding of what next do I do. Okay.
I mean, so again, Mr. Senator, let's go back to the history of this, because this is also important, right? I mean, this is not the first time Martin Amidu has been in government. In fact, the last time he was in government, he left under similar controversial circumstances. He had fallen out with the government. He had gone public with his what he's found in the Woyome matter, branding some of his own colleagues in government to having been engaged in gargantuan corruption. He was asked to justify, at least that's what the formal line of government was. In a cabinet meeting, it turned sour and pretty chaotic. He was then sacked in a statement that came from the presidency in which they said that he had misconducted himself. Now, I mean, when he was appointed this time, everybody thought right person because he had been the citizen vigilante. Does that history, for example, suggest that it's possible that his own style may be a problem in his ability to do his job the way he's supposed to?
No.
Well, I would not say that style would not have an influence on the result we have seen. However, if we're doing research, I mean, in economics, you say all ceteris paribus, all other factors remaining constant. I would have loved a situation where, first of all, Mr. Amidu and his AFID were given the capacity, which the president has and can give, to directly procure services of the kind of human resource with the kind of integrity to prosecute the work of that office. I'd have loved a situation where he had control over sanctioning his officers. So if they're dilly-dallying with investigation or cases, he could sanction them, replace them, and make sure that things were on track so that delivery was on time. I'd have liked a situation where when he complained about officers, and we indeed were taking to an office not too far from GIJ that it was said would be given to him. Eventually that hasn't happened. So he hasn't had that adequate space for his staff. I would have loved a situation where his appointment letter reflected the commitments that government have made to him and the emoluments, and you've raised a point that he needs to explain which emoluments he's talking about, such that with all other factors having been properly addressed as employers are supposed to do for the employees, we can then assess him purely on the merit of his competence and performance at the job. Failing that, failing the employer's provision of the basics of the environment, of the kind of support that he required, I think that it will be unfair to draw an assessment and a conclusion on him, except to even suggest that potentially Mr. Amidu was set up for failure.
I mean, Nathan Debugri, your reaction to that same question, drawing from that history in 2012?
Don't allow character evidence except in certain circumstances. In other words, you cannot say that because somebody has been convicted of stealing, for example, in the past, therefore, if he's charged with stealing, therefore, he necessarily will be guilty. That seems to be what you are trying to do. That, at certain stages of his participation in official duties, he has portrayed a certain character. So you want to use that character to justify his resignation and to say that whatever he's saying falls in line with what has happened in the past. I don't think that is acceptable. The man has made a specific allegation that the president himself has sought to interfere with the functions of his office. That's a very serious allegation, isn't it? And that is what we should be focusing on. The president who purportedly established that office for the purposes of fighting corruption, just because his relatives or persons closely associated with him are involved in a matter which the special prosecutor has analyzed and is making an attempt to investigate for the purposes of prosecution. You call him and tell him that he must not do it. Is that independent? Is it a matter of just writing in the law that the office of special prosecutor or the special prosecutor for the purposes of performing his functions is independent? Is that enough? So let us concentrate on the substance of the allegations he has made, which have grounded his decision to resign. And besides, I have made this point, and I think you should take note of it. He says the event of 12th November 2020 have removed the only protection he had in connection with this matter, and therefore he has no choice but to resign immediately. It means that it is the Rollins who was protecting him in the performance in the thing, and we know that the Rollins had good relations with the president and the government and so on. So let us think about that. My concern now is to ensure the security of Martin Amidu, because the revelations he has made are very grave. The president himself has called him and tried to instruct him to use him as a poodle to cover up deeds that are taking place in his table. And I think we should be talking about that. Not these theoretical things about, the law has provided that he is independent. If the law says you are independent, and in actual fact on the ground you are not independent, does Martin have an army? Does he have a police force? Was he not to depend on the instruments of state? So please.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Ndebugi, stay with me. I want to take a quick break. When I return, I'll bring in the chair of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament. On this subject, Martin Amidu introduces about his emolument and his entitlement. His committee has been looking into the documents surrounding his office and what emoluments and benefits they're entitled to. What is it that he can tell us about that? Stay with me. You're still listening to, watching us here on the PM Express. Martin Amidu has tonight resigned. A lot of ramifications We'll look quickly in the next few minutes before we wrap up what this means for the fight, but also the many cases that he was still handling, particularly as he discloses, tonight in his resignation letter that he had an intention to open a full-scale criminal investigations into the Japa deal with intention to prosecute later. But I want to quickly bring in Ben Abdallah into the conversation. Ben Abdallah, if you can confirm for me, Martin Amidu says in the public statement that his emolument that he was entitled to, for example, salary in question, he hasn't been paid salary for almost 2 years, including his deputy, who hasn't taken any salary at all. And he was asking that the system, the government addresses that now that he's gone. Is that what it is? Because I heard Inusaf Husseini mention that he was actually drawing salary from the presidency. Clarify that for me. Let me bring in Edem Senanu. Edem Senanu, I'll come to shortly to Edem Senanu. Give me a sense of this. What happens now? Now that this has happened, Martin Amidu was still handling the Japa deal. He had indicated that he was going to investigate, open a criminal investigations into the Japa deal before his resignation. There are many other cases that he was himself directly superintending. What happens to all these cases now? Apologies there. We're having the challenges with both lines for both the Ben Abdallah and Edem Senanu. Hopefully, let me bring in John Ndebugri. Mr. Ndebugri, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
I mean, what happens now? He's gone. The office remains. He was directly supervising this Ijapa deal. Had said in a letter to the president that he intended to open a full-scale criminal investigations into it. What should happen now on that matter?
Yeah, well, two ways. The state can still decide to. The state can still decide to proceed. Hello, are you hearing me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. The state can still proceed to deal with the matter if they are minded, if not the state, the government, if it is minded to do so. But it is clear from Martin's resignation letter that the president himself was preventing him from proceeding. So it means that matter has to be in abeyance. And on the 7th of December, if Ghanaians want that matter to be dealt with properly, they should vote accordingly. And then maybe the ensuing government will do something about it. Otherwise, my real position is that this office of special prosecutor is to no effect. It should be scrapped. And then we should go back to basic principles and reorganize, as I have already stated. So, about what happens to the Ajapa deal, it is neither here nor there, because Mr. Amidu has made it clear that he has resigned because the president himself called him and put pressure on him not to deal with the matter. So, and he is still president. Somebody has been voted out somewhere, and he has refused to concede, and there's confusion there. So, about people who want to be powerful over everybody else, you are very little to do except to insist on the processes to take their real course.
Well, interesting days ahead, obviously. Mr. Ndebugri, I'm grateful. Mr. Abdallah, thank you very much also. And Edem Senanu. Of course, this has serious ramifications as we wait to hear from the presidency, their reaction to what has unfolded tonight. You want to join us again tomorrow? I'm pretty sure that more on this in the coming hours. Enjoy the rest of your evening.